give temporary housing for some people. And it's a wonderful foundation, and then I love the work that they do. But that didn't work for me. And then there was another foundation that a pastor friend recommended me to talk to his friend that ran this foundation. And I came on board there, but they weren't very well funded. And so I came on working for free, just trying to help them grow, to create a position within their foundation. But I learned very quickly that if I'm working with some other people that have a different vision, their vision was wonderful. Their vision was wonderful. They were involved in fighting sex trafficking and things of that nature. An incredible foundation. Well, I decided at that point, the only way that I'm going to really be able to serve the way that I believe the Lord wants me to is to form my own foundation. And so that was in my thinking, but I didn't know what type of foundation, so I started doing great deals of research on forming nonprofits. Well, along that time, my financial circumstances got critical overnight. That's one of the things that I understand about life is that life can turn on a dime. And that's why I really try to teach to have something to fall back on. I'll be doing a show while I'm on the trip that I'm going to talk about at the end of this show about having something in your back pocket, something to fall back on, having a plan. That's, if you took the time, which nobody probably would be able to listen to all the shows that I've had. This is my 23rd show plus the interview, so 24th airing. They all say the same thing about don't quit, plan ahead, it will get better. That's my theme, that's my motto. But my finances all of a sudden got awful. That's not the word, it's tragic. It got almost impossible because my relationship with my banker for 36 or 7 years now, who is my first board member, and Don Price, I want to say before I go any further that we meet people in our lives that we treasure our association. We treasure our friendship. We admire people. We want to be around people like that. Don Price is one of the people in my life I can count them on my hand that have been there with me all the way through. I've got a 37-year relationship with Don Price, and I really want to get him on the show someday so I can really properly introduce you to Don Price. But Don Price was there for me, but he left his bank because 5 of the senior people, the top people in the bank, he was one of the top people, but he wasn't one of these others. They ultimately all went to prison. $330 million of that bank's money was handled fraudulently, and he ended up leaving that bank along with a couple others that I know very well that are just wonderful, good people. They needed to leave. It was an incredible inconvenience in his life to have to uproot his own career and move elsewhere. But Don Price, he left the bank because of the fraud that was going on that he was aware of, and like I say, he became the key witness for the indictment and then in the trials. Don Price left, and when he left, the bank replaced him with another loan officer, and they came after me and wanted to call a loan that was my line of credit secured by my house. I had made every payment. My credit was 783, very high credit. I had had this loan for about 3 years. I made every payment on time. And I'm a development guy. Sometimes you have to use lines of credit to keep your deal alive until you get all the deals in place. A lot of deals don't happen, and then you just keep on the next deal. Well, they came in and they told me that they were going to call my loan because my income wasn't sufficient to support the debt. The loan to value, the loan to income rather, ratio. Well, I have a lot of friends that are high ups in banks, presidents of banks, and I'm involved in the banking community, and I knew that they didn't have to do this to me. And so I fought with them. But at this time, I risked losing everything because if they called that loan and I couldn't pay it, I was going to lose my house. And I had several $100,000 of equity in my house at the time. Well, long story short, it took 2 years to find out why they did this to me. But the bank was doing deals like this. They were calling loans if they could on good customers like me, taking the equity away from them, and flipping the house. And the owner of the bank's son was in the mortgage division. So they were giving loans to the son so he could go in and they would foreclose at the bank. The son would come in and buy up the property and flip it within a couple days or a month or something and pull out the equity. Well, I didn't know that for 2 years, and hey, I pray for everyone that did that. I'm not vindictive here. But so in life, these things happen sometimes that are completely out of our control. So I had to suffer through that. And that was very difficult. I was at church during all this, asking my congregation to pray for me because I didn't want to lose my house. Immediately after church, Steve Forbes and Fred, they came up to me and introduced themselves and said, "Man, we didn't know that you were a business guy. Could you help us?" And I asked them what they did. They had a barber shop. They had just got their license to have a barber school. And they asked me to help them grow their school. So I'm going to speed up the chronological things here because I have many, many things that I want to kind of just give you more of an overview. So I went out to their barber shop, and the first thing they said to me was, "Can you help us get into prisons and rehab centers?" And I did what you mean, Willis? And they said, well, that's where we started. Turns out that 20, 25 years before, they had both been incarcerated for 5 or 6 years, and they said that they wanted to be there for people when they got out. And so I took on the assignment. 6 months later, we have a federal program that gives scholarships to people that are in hardship. That it's the WIA Investment Act of 1997 or something. And so we built their school. And over the next couple of years, including about a month ago, Steve and Fred and Harvey was a third person that would go sometimes. They would go with me in prisons, and we would motivate people that if they could go through with what they've gone through and be successful, then you can too. So we started really trying to help people succeed in prisons. But I'm sitting right here looking at some documents. I've got a United States of America, United States Patent and Trademark Office for the words right thinking. And it's got all the official numbers and everything else, and I just love it. And it says that this is a patent on the 2 words right thinking for personal, finance, and small business ownership training services in class 41, and it goes on all this technical stuff. And it gives me those 2 words. And I just want to say thank you for that the words right thinking, those words are biblical words as well. I wrote almost 5.5 years ago when I started my IRS 501c3 application as a nonprofit. I did an overview. I had a vision statement to help returning citizens to a better chance of success at becoming productive, contributing members of society by providing vocational rehabilitation services such as education in the areas of personal financial management, entrepreneurship skills, and job counseling. Right Thinking Foundation will help those unemployed returning citizens who have a job market disadvantage to stabilize their lives by providing a platform through which they can communicate and stay connected with mentors and potential employers in positive ways. Well, that vision stayed the same all the way through, but I learned a lot. And that's one thing we all have to do in life, is we have to learn from what's going on around us. And so I embarked in a process. And part of that process was I called up a friend of mine when I went to high school with, that worked in the workforce area. And he was an executive, and One Stop is the name of the program. His name was Bill Coley. He went to high school with him. He was a pretty cool guy. We played a lot of basketball together, and we had a few beers. I don't drink anymore, but he was a fun guy. Anyway, he sent me to Nancy Stevenson at the One Stop in Norfolk. And when I told her what I was trying to do, she told me to call D'Angelo White at St. Bride's Prison, because Steve and Fred wanted me to get him into prisons. And so she connected me with a person that worked inside the prison for the Department of Corrections and Workforce Development. Workforce Development is a program that they work with inmates that are called returning citizens, to help prepare them for release by getting their job skills, getting them understanding better about how they can re-enter the job market and go through interviews and be trained for something. And so I met with him. And so I went into St. Bride's, and he said to me, Steve, we've never had anybody with your background and your financial capabilities. I'd been an executive in large companies, put together a lot of things, handled a lot. I'm an accountant. So anyway, D'Angelo asked me would I like to start teaching a class. And I didn't have any idea. I just wanted to get Master Stokes Barber School into prisons so they could start introducing themselves to people to see if anybody wanted to learn how to cut hair when they got out. So I started a class, and I started that class at St. Bride's. And that's been in February of 2012, 5.5 years ago. And I had 17 men in my first class. The shortest sentence that was sitting in that class had been in there for 8 years, and the longest was 23. And this is when I really started understanding. There were people that had been convicted of murder, sex offense, robbery, armed robbery, just all sorts of things. And so I started teaching a class called Personal Finance and Small Business Ownership, with the premise of what right thinking is all about, which is to basically be able to get on top of your finances so that you relieve that stress in your life, and so that you can be better focused for the other things that come at you that just come out of nowhere. Like I said, my banker, he left, and they came in to call a loan. Well, things happen out of our control, so let's get on top of our money. And as I go through that, I'll tell you the mission of right thinking, the second paragraph of my program description. The program is based on the premise that if a person is under financial stress, he or she will make bad decisions. A person that has been incarcerated and is making bad decisions has a very high chance that he or she will recidivate. The program teaches an overall awareness of how money works in a person's life and provides tools that will assist them as they learn to plan ahead, making right decisions, reducing the amount of stress in their lives, and not reverting back to the old ways of thinking that resulted in their incarceration. The program provides encouragement, motivation, and hope. The components of the program are Personal Finance and Small Business Ownership Seminar, Personal Budget Class, Business Plan Class, one-on-one sessions, Research and Business Ideas, and Mentoring of Ex-Offenders upon release. So the program has been evolving since my very first desire to be a nonprofit, and then I got hooked up from church with Steve and Fred, and then I got into St. Bride's, and that's where I really started cutting my eye teeth, so to speak, on working with the population and knowing that this is where I belong. And I was doing the seminar with a PowerPoint one day, and I was about an hour into it. The seminar that I did, I had written about 20 years earlier when I was working with the Small Business Development Center, and basically I changed the name of it.